negative for Donald Trump.
But why can't you just acknowledge that what Donald Trump said this morning was abhorrent and that no president should ever threaten annihilating a civilization? Why can't you just acknowledge that?
Look, he's talking to them in the way he thinks he needs to talk to them.
Why can't you acknowledge that? That is something that no president of the United States should say. Because I don't take orders from you, number one, and number two, I gave him the space to negotiate with the Iranians the best way he knows how.
All right, well, let me just ask a final question, Scott, for the record. Do you think it's acceptable for the president to threaten to annihilate a civilization?
I think it's acceptable for the commander-in-chief to deal with these people in the best way that he can.
Donald Trump posted that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again, about Iran, on social media, then deleted it. The Pope called it unacceptable, a moral issue. Orrin Cass, a conservative commentator close to J.D. Vance, called it pointless, empty threats making America look foolish. Marjorie Taylor Greene called it evil and madness and floated the 25th Amendment. Tucker Carlson said the war was wrong. And CNN brought in Scott Jennings. Same tie, same table, same job. Trump says something indefensible, and Scott Jennings puts on the suit and defends it, night after night, without blinking. Tara Setmayer, a former Republican who knows exactly what this act is, asked him the simplest question you can ask a grown man on television. Do you think it is acceptable for a president to threaten to annihilate a civilization? And Scott Jennings, who always has an answer for everything, showed you exactly who he is with what he could not say. Abby Phillip closed it in 4 words. I am not spoiling them. Hit that like button, subscribe to Kelly Takeover, and let's get into every piece of this. Let's go.
Right, a question about American values. After President Trump warned that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again, he has since delayed that threat now for 2 weeks, but it still sent shockwaves all over the world, including the Vatican.
Today, as we all know, there was also this threat against all the people of Iran. This is truly unacceptable. There are certainly issues of international law here, but much more. It's a moral issue, for the good of the people entirely.
The Pope has been weighing in on this conflict for a while now, but I think you described it as a genocidal threat. Mm-hmm. Other people have described it that way. I mean, there's this debate always, should you take Trump literally or seriously? But whether you take him literally or seriously, saying that you're going to end a civilization is a serious threat that no American president has ever issued before.
And you shouldn't. And honestly, those sorts of things when just really are very unhelpful. But I would also say we're not unaccustomed to him doing this. He did it with respect to North Korea. He said similar things with respect to China. He's made bluffs with respect to Canada. He's done it over and over again. And every time that he does this, I find that the media is running around chasing its tail with respect to him. I get he's the president of the United States. He should not be saying any of that sort of thing. And it's wrong. It is absolutely wrong. At the same time, how many times are we going to do this with this guy? I mean, why? I mean, why are we engaging?
You can blame the media, but it's also
so the onus is on us to say, oh, well, we'll just ignore him because he's making statements like a mad king. So we just normalize it as, well, that's just Trump being Trump and move on. Is this someone that you would tell your kids that you should look up to this guy and believe what he says, with the president of the United States, or just, well, you can go around and say whatever you want and threaten to, annihilate civilizations and just, it's the media chasing its tail every time he says something like that.
No, in fact, I've said exactly the opposite to my kids. I have said exactly the opposite.
I'm glad.
Yes,
so why is the standard different for the president of the United States? You wouldn't let your kids get away with talking like that.
Because it's happened over and over and over again. Yes, and he wasn't. He is the president of the United States.
Job
so
to hold him accountable
you have to actually deal with what you have. Right. And what we're dealing right now is with a president that, again, I take the view, and I know it's a minority view, what he has done with respect to Iran has been good for society. It's been good for the world. Hamas has been degraded. Hezbollah has been degraded. The Iranian military, the nuclear, it is an evil nation state. I look at the long game rather than a bunch of talking heads.
We're not, like I said, we're doing the service to Mad Kings. Mad Kings haven't said things like that since going back to Genghis Khan. True. This is not even unprecedented in modern times. It was unprecedented even in medieval times to say things like this. And what a president says matters. It's not enough to say, well, that's just Trump, and let's not chase our tails around this. When we have politicians at this table. When politicians speak, what they say, the way they say it matters and ought to matter. If when I was a child and came home and if I used a profanity, my parents didn't say that's just Bobby being Bobby and we could just go on with that. I got my punishment for that. And the president should not get a free pass. He's an 80-year-old man. He's a grown adult. He cannot be just simply brushed. This kind of behavior, this kind of language cannot simply be brushed away. A civilization? For crying out loud. We're not even allowed to say that about a town or a village. We're not supposed to use language like that. George Bush went to Iraq and he used very different language. The language, I covered that war. And it was not a war I was in support of, but I covered it as a journalist in Baghdad for 5 years. I distinctly remember George Bush saying, we come to Iraq with respect for your civilization, with respect for the faiths that are practiced here. There's a difference. Presidential language goes down in history.
Agreed.
And that's got to count for something, and we cannot simply brush this away like this.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't have any respect for the government, for this regime, but I'll tell you, unhinged and unhelpful. That's the only way when you read something like that and you say, how does this advance the ball forward? Mm-hmm. And also, there's only so many times you can cry wolf and say things like that are so extreme and crazy where people just blow you off, including other world leaders, and don't take you seriously. And I think the more this, yes, we're desensitized, you're right, and that's not a good thing. And by the way, a little language, I'm from Jersey, so a little's okay. Let's not get too clean.
I get how old you are. It's because this is conservative commentator Orrin Cass. He's close to Vice President J.D. Vance. He says, simply put, what is the point of all of this? If these are empty threats that we all know he will not carry out, then they are ineffective threats. The Iranians are on X too, and merely making the president and our nation look foolish. If they're not empty threats, and the president is asserting the American position that such actions are acceptable in this situation and ones that we are willing to take. We are not living in some quantum thought experiment where he is simultaneously is and is not serious.
I don't agree that he's made empty threats as it relates to Iran. I
This
don't think
is literally an empty threat.
I don't think the people that we decapitated at the top of their regime would call them empty threats either. I mean, we've clearly demonstrated the interest in using the U.S. military to take drastic action.
All of the shifting deadlines.
Right.
What do you call the threat this morning to end their civilization, only to accept a 10-point plan that was put on the table yesterday as the basis for negotiations?
You haven't seen the 10-point plan, A. All we know is that they said they would reopen the strait. Beyond that, we don't know anything.
Hold on a second. The president retweeted the Iranian foreign minister's statement, which said explicitly that they are using the 10-point plan as a basis of negotiation. I'm not making that up. The president reiterated that on an ex post, Scott.
But I have a
so my point is the threats from Trump
and some of the stuff that's
to bomb their bridges, to bomb their desalination plants, to bomb them out of their civilization off the face of the earth. How are those not empty threats?
Well, it looks like it brought them to the table tonight and got them in a place where they would agree to a ceasefire. I mean, I'll give you a counter argument to all these other positions, which is
that is not connected to reality.
We have a ceasefire.
Tel Aviv is still under attack.
The same table that we have tonight is the table that existed yesterday, in large part. And fundamentally, the only thing that has been agreed to is that Iran will continue to control the Strait of Hormuz and will allow ships to go through on their control. That is the only thing that has been agreed to.
The strait is going to be reopened, and we're going to negotiate about the rest. Beyond that, we don't really know much of anything. But I will tell you, yesterday, Iran was saying, we're cutting off, talks. We're not going to continue the talks. The president uses some extreme language, and all of a sudden, voila, tonight, we have a ceasefire for 2 weeks. Why can't we just say, you know what? Maybe we have achieved military objectives. Maybe we have taken down their military and their ability to export terror. Maybe we have decimated their missiles. Maybe we've buried the nuclear material. And maybe we've got 2 weeks to make the world a safer place. Why can't we look at this as a glass half full moment as opposed to,
but then why
we have to make it negative for Donald Trump.
But why can't you just acknowledge that what Donald Trump said this morning was abhorrent and that no president should ever threaten annihilating a civilization? Why can't you just acknowledge that?
Look, he's talking to them in the way he thinks he needs to talk to them.
Why can't you acknowledge that? That is something that no president of the United States should say. Because I don't take orders from you, number one, and number two, I give him the space to negotiate with the Iranians the best way he knows how.
All right, well, let me just ask a final question, Scott, for the record. Do you think it's acceptable for the president to threaten to annihilate a civilization?
I think it's acceptable for the commander-in-chief to deal with these people in the best way that he can.
Is that a yes or is it a no?
Result.
Is that a yes or is it a no?
So that's a yes.
Is that a yes or a no?
I'm not going to second guess him.
So it's a yes.
He put out a statement. We now have a ceasefire.
Okay.
Those are the two things
I just wanted to ask for the record.
Yes.
That's a yes on your part. Yeah. We'll leave it.
Let us be precise about what Scott Jennings was actually doing at that table, because it was not analysis, and it was not political commentary in any meaningful sense of the phrase. Trump posted that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. That is a genocidal threat posted by the sitting president of the United States on social media about a country of 90 million people. He then deleted it. The Vatican called it unacceptable, a moral issue. not a diplomatic disagreement, a moral one. The Pope does not use that language lightly, and the fact that it landed that way in Rome should tell you everything about how it landed everywhere else in the world that is not a CNN panel in America. And here's the thing that makes Scott Jennings' position at that table so specific and so revealing. This was not a case where reasonable people could disagree about the interpretation. Orrin Cass, conservative, close to J.D. Vance, not a Democrat, not a liberal critic, said simply put, what is the point of this? He said if the threats are empty, they make America look foolish. And if they are not empty, the president is asserting that annihilating a civilization is an acceptable American position. Marjorie Taylor Greene called it evil and madness. Tucker Carlson said the war was wrong. The president's own political allies, the people who built this movement alongside him, were on their own platforms saying what Scott Jennings could not say in 4 minutes on CNN. Which tells you something important. This was not about belief. This was about a job. Tara Setmayer asked him directly. She gave him every opportunity to say a simple thing, a true thing, an obvious thing that the Pope and Orrin Cass and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson had already said out loud without their careers ending. Do you think it is acceptable for the President of the United States to threaten to annihilate a civilization? His answer was that he thinks it is acceptable for the Commander-in-Chief to deal with these people in the best way he can to get a net result. That is a yes, dressed up in 15 words, but a yes. And when Tara Setmayer asked him to just acknowledge that no president should ever threaten to annihilate a civilization, he said, I don't take orders from you, and I gave him the space to negotiate. I don't take orders from you. That is what came out when someone asked Scott Jennings to say something true about a deleted social media post threatening to end a civilization of 90 million people. Not an argument, not a counterpoint. I don't take orders from you. And Abby Phillip closed it. For the record, that is a yes on your part. We'll leave it there. 4 words. We'll leave it there. The most precise editorial decision made on cable news this year. Now let me ask you something about the Standard, because this is the part of this conversation that goes beyond Scott Jennings and beyond one CNN panel. Ask yourself this honestly. Is there one company in America, one, that would keep an employee who posted what Donald Trump posted on their social media that day? Your manager posts that a civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back. He has cleared out his desk by lunch. The HR email goes out before dinner. That is the standard that every working person in this country lives under every single day. A standard the most powerful man in the country is never held to. And there is a paid rotation of professional defenders making sure that standard never applies to him. And do not tell me the bar is too high, because look who was already clearing it. Tucker Carlson said the war was wrong. Marjorie Taylor Greene called the post evil and madness and raised the 25th Amendment. When Marjorie Taylor Greene is showing more political spine than you, that is not a bar anymore. That is a limbo stick, and Scott Jennings was under it at that table with his tie on. The pattern matters here because it is bigger than one night. Every time Trump does something that would end any other political career, a rotation of professional defenders shows up to launder it. They say something technically true to establish credibility. I don't agree with the language. It was unhelpful. He shouldn't have said it. And then pivot immediately to why it is actually fine in the grand scheme of things and why the real problem is the media. Van Lathan named it perfectly when he called it laundering in a different segment. You say the right thing and then use it as a permission slip for everything that follows. Here is the prediction I want you to hold me to. The moment Trump's approval collapses, and the numbers are already moving, every single one of these professional defenders is going to look into a camera and say they had reservations, that they were never really on board, that they raised concerns privately. The rebrand is already being drafted in real time. The distance is already being created in small, careful increments. And the only thing that stops it from working is the receipts. Tara Setmayer asked the easiest question in politics. Abby Phillip closed the door. And Scott Jennings showed you exactly who he is with 4 minutes of answers that never included the word no. You saw it. That is why we are here. Drop a comment below. Is there